Imagine being trapped in a tiny bottle beneath the sea, your fate bound to an impossible rule. You can only be free if someone makes 3 wishes. That's the life of a djinn. But this isn't some Arabian Nights fairy tale. It's the story about to unfold for Alithia, a lonely scholar on a trip to Istanbul. The movie opens with lonely British scholar Alithia traveling to Istanbul, where she'll give a talk about the link between science and myths. As she exits the plane, a strange glowing man that nobody else sees tries to guide her luggage cart towards what he calls mystery. But when Alithia's colleagues arrive, the little man flees. Alithia tells her friends about the incident, and they jokingly suggest she must have seen a djinn. Later during her talk, Alithia sees another strange glowing man in the audience that nobody else can see. When she starts explaining that the old gods became what we know as science and old myths are now metaphors, the odd man calls it nonsense and jumps on her, causing her to faint. She wakes up minutes later, and her colleagues take her to a room while the audience applauds. After the conference, Alithia goes downtown to browse antique shops, ignoring her friends' concern and assuring them she's fine. In one of these shops, she finds a curious little blue bottle and decides to buy it instead of a fancier item. The next morning in the hotel, she cleans the bottle and finally opens it, releasing a djinn that fills most of the room. After some trial and error, Alithia discovers the djinn speaks Greek, and he explains she has nothing to fear. He's bound to her now and will grant her 3 wishes, though she can't ask for more wishes, immortality, or universal peace. While he talks, the djinn touches objects in the room, turning on the TV and quickly learning English from its broadcasts. Then, the djinn asks Alithia for her heart's deepest desires, but Alithia is uneasy with the idea and needs time to think. First, she shares a part of her story that she's never told anyone. As a child in boarding school, she was already a very solitary person. One day, a mysterious supernatural boy began visiting her and keeping her company when she was struggling, telling her stories in a language only they understood. Not knowing how long he'd stay, Alithia began documenting their talks, but the more realistic she tried to be, the more doubtful and silly she felt. After a while, she burned all her notes and never saw the boy again. Their talk is interrupted by Alithia's breakfast delivery, though she waits to open the door until the djinn vanishes. After hanging the Do Not Disturb sign, Alithia turns to find the djinn has shrunk and made her modest breakfast more extravagant. To stall for time, Alithia asks how the djinn ended up in her bottle. He explains it's his 3rd imprisonment, always due to his foolish heart and conversations with women. It began with his cousin Sheba, a half-djinn queen with a thick mane of black leg hair. The djinn was her plaything and confidant, but felt free as he could come and go as he wished. He hoped to become her husband, but sadly, King Solomon arrived, crossing deserts to woo her. The djinn warned Sheba against him, and she promised no mortal could conquer her, but eventually she gave in to his charms, even waxing her legs for their wedding night. Solomon sensed Sheba's connection to the djinn, and using magic, imprisoned him in a brass bottle. He tossed it to a bird, which dropped it in the Red Sea. Djinns don't sleep, so for 100 years, he raged and prayed to every god for release. In the end, he tricked himself, praying to stay in the bottle, hoping that false contentment would ease his pain. Sadly, for djinns, having no wants is like death. Now, they return to the topic of Alithia's desires. She says she's successful with everything she needs, despite lacking children or close family. She was once married, but after a miscarriage, the relationship fell apart and they divorced. Her husband left with a new lover, and to this day, Alithia keeps some of his things boxed up at home. Some time ago, her husband accused her of being unable to read emotions, and she agrees. Her mind works in a way that makes her smart, but also causes loneliness. This is why she loves stories she can find feelings through them. Still, Alithia doesn't want her husband back. Divorce brought her freedom. But as a storyteller, she knows djinn's wishes come with a catch, or end in cautionary tales. The djinn insists he's honorable, but Alithia's hesitant, wondering if she can simply make no wishes. This causes the djinn pain, confirming that wishes must be made to avoid bad consequences. To prove it, he tells Alithia the story of his 2nd imprisonment. Fishermen found the bottle inside a fish, but its hard coating made them think it was a rock, so they discarded it. The rock passed through many hands until it became part of a wall. There, Gultan found it while trying to climb to spy on Prince Mustafa. Gultan lived as a slave in the palace's concubine courtyard. She fainted when she opened the bottle and found the djinn. When she awoke, she knew her wish, to become one of Mustafa's concubines. The djinn granted her wish, and Gultan enjoyed her new life, hiding the bottle under a heavy floor tile in a secret bathroom. While awaiting the other 2 wishes, the djinn roamed the palace and learned about humans. His attention fell on Hurrem, the sultan's favorite slave. As a master manipulator, Hurrem sought to protect her own son's claim to the throne over Mustafa's. She had many spies watching the prince. The Djinn worried Gultan would become caught in a political scheme and tried to warn her, but she ignored him, wishing to become pregnant with Mustafa's child. Meanwhile, the Sultan's warriors feared he was becoming too soft and considered undermining him. Hurrem learned of this and told the Sultan that Mustafa was leading the soldiers in a plot to overthrow him, forcing the Sultan to make a terrible choice. During all this, Gultan was far from discreet. She flaunted her pregnancy, certain she carried the next prince. The Sultan heard of this and made his choice. He called Mustafa to his tent and killed him without even asking about his loyalty. As soon as the Djinn learned this, he warned Gultan they would come for her next. He pleaded for the third wish, but she refused to believe him, running straight into the assassins. The Djinn tried to help, but one of the assassins followed Iblis, the devil, and had the power to block him. Gultan was thrown into the sea. The Djinn jumped to save her, but it was too late. Now, with a third wish unfulfilled, the Djinn was bound to this world, unable to return to the Djinn realm until he found another master. Alithia finds this story darkly ironic, as it's precisely the kind of cautionary tale about wishing that she's been describing. The Djinn again stresses that not wishing dooms him, and continues his story to prove his point. After Gultan's death, the Djinn roamed as an unseen force, his bottle still hidden under the floor tile. For a century, he tried to get people's attention, but failed until Princes Murad and Ibrahim sensed his presence and found the secret bathroom. They almost lifted the floor tile, but their mother Kosum, the Sultan's widow, interrupted them. Murad's long leg hair marked him as Sheba's descendant, so the Djinn tried to follow him, hoping for attention. Sadly, Murad became Sultan at 14, his life consumed by politics. While the older Murad waged war, Kosum locked the adult Ibrahim in a room with women, hoping to produce a male heir and secure their rule. Ibrahim loved the idea, favoring voluptuous women, believing more flesh meant more pleasure. When Murad returned from war, his soul was scarred by bloodshed and trauma. Fearful of competition, he considered killing Ibrahim, but Kosum stopped him, pointing out Ibrahim's laziness made him a non-threat. Still, Kosum protected her heir factory. She kept Murad drunk and hired storytellers to distract him. Murad hated them, killing those too slow to escape. But one old man charmed him with tales, becoming his only friend. When the old man died, Murad's grief drove him to drink heavily. In this weakened state, the Djinn finally caught his attention. Murad found the secret bathroom again, but he was too weak to even open the door. Soon after, he drank himself to death. No one else could sense the Djinn. Alithia understands the loneliness, having felt it herself. Back to the story, Ibrahim had to be dragged to the throne. He made his favorite concubine, Sugar Lump, governor of Damascus. This power gave Sugar Lump freedom to roam, and she eventually found the secret bathroom. Her size cracked the tile when she fell on it, revealing the bottle. Sugar Lump distrusted the Djinn when he appeared, begging for a wish and smelling foul. Fearing a trickster, Sugar Lump wished the Djinn back into his bottle at the bottom of the Bosphorus. To Alithia, this again proves wishing is a bad idea. She suggests giving the Djinn to someone else, but he refuses to go back in the bottle. Alithia then makes 3 quick, silly wishes, like a sip of tea. So, they don't work, since wishes must come from the heart. An argument follows, with the Djinn calling Alithia a coward. In turn, Alithia wonders if she should wish they'd never met. This hurts the Djinn, causing his bottle to crack and the electronics to flicker. Alithia guesses this has happened before. The Djinn begins his third and final story. Zephyr was a foundling, married at 12 to a wealthy, much older merchant. His other wives disliked Zephyr, and she felt the whole household, even the servants, mocked her. The bottle came as a gift from her husband, who saw it fall from a fish being cleaned. After pleasing him as thanks, Zephyr managed to open the bottle. The Djinn quickly saw her intelligence and shared his story. In return, she revealed her own hidden creations. Sadly, being a woman, nobody took her seriously, leaving her feeling like a witch with untapped power. Her first wish was for knowledge. The Djinn gladly granted it with piles of books. To hide these from her husband, they stored them in magic bottles. The Djinn spent his days with her, teaching her sciences and languages. They fell in love. The more she learned, the bolder Zephyr became, defying her husband. Sadly, his desire for her was obsessive. When forced to submit, the Djinn would roam the skies, gathering stories for Zephyr's return. Her second wish came when stumped by an ancient math problem. She asked to see the world as Djinns do. This revealed the solutions and got her pregnant with the Djinn's child. The Djinn was overjoyed, no longer wanting to leave for the Djinn realm. He stopped Zephyr from making the third wish. This angered Zephyr, who now saw the Djinn as controlling like her husband. When they argued, the Djinn would hide in a bottle to calm her. Finally, Zephyr couldn't bear it and wished to forget him entirely. Magic erased her memory instantly, trapping the Djinn in his bottle once more. After hearing this, Alethea knows her wish. She believes she's meant to love the Djinn and wishes for him to love her back so their loneliness can be shared. The Djinn accepts, and they spend a lovely night together. The next day, Alethea must return home to London and offers the Djinn a new bottle for travel. At the airport, she keeps the bottle in her pocket, but security forces her to place it on the scanner tray. Alethea fears the scanner or conveyor belt will break the bottle, but thankfully it survives. Upon arrival, the Djinn must adjust to the city, overwhelmed by its constant noise and electrical signals. They begin a peaceful life together. When Alethea works, the Djinn explores humanity's newest creations, like surgery and the collider. One afternoon, Alethea finds the Djinn asleep in the basement, which is forbidden. His body is turning to ash, the city's effects taking their toll. Alethea uses her second wish to restore his voice. They have a crucial talk where Alethea realizes that forced love is wrong. She chooses to set the Djinn free. The bottle breaks, and the Djinn returns to his realm as Alethea sleeps. The next morning, she boxes up the few things the Djinn used, placing them alongside her husband's belongings. 3 years pass. Alethea has finished a book illustrating all the Djinn's stories. To her surprise, the Djinn reappears. Now healed, he can visit her occasionally, helping her combat loneliness in a healthier way.